Travis Campbell. What's
Where are
up,
you?
man?
Where are you?
I'm in my car. I'm not
You're not
driving,
driving, are you? Are you driving?
no, I'm parked just to talk to you.
I see things going behind you, so it looks like you're driving.
Well, I'm not. So just believe me.
Are you at Burbank Studios with the stuff
Nope.
going on around? No?
I am in Monrovia, about to have dinner with a friend that you and I know, but I probably shouldn't mention on the air. So there you go.
And will this friend be seen with you in public?
We got a table in the closet because he didn't want to be seen with me.
Uh, it really is a stretch for people to want to eat dinner with you in a public setting. It's a big ask.
Well, it is. You and I had dinner once at Buca de Beppo in the kitchen. Remember
That's
that?
right. That's right. You basically just, because you're like, if people don't want to be seen with me in public, that's twice as true of you. So we're gonna have to go in the kitchen.
They don't want to see how much I eat. That's what it is.
That was
Everybody's jealous.
If I remember correctly, that was a fun restaurant.
That's a great place in Pasadena. It's so much fun. Yep. Yep.
Pasadena, the one, I think it's the only place I've ever been where they had the cross walk diagonal.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before. I'm a country bumpkin from Southwest Georgia. I'm not familiar with such sophisticated things.
They got paved roads out there.
But for about 4 weeks now, we've had our first paved roads.
And well, there's something else coming. Then maybe you've never seen, and that's like traffic lights.
Ooh, yeah. All kidding aside, everything in Albany is like 5 minutes away.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's pretty cool.
The statement in LA that I always heard is everything's an hour away and everything's an hour away.
Next door is an hour away. That's right.
I've said this before. I was heading to but for the thousands that'll be viewing this for the first time, I'll tell this anecdote. I was bumper to bumper traffic as usual in LA, and my GPS said that I was going to go see my brother-in-law. The GPS said that my brother-in-law was 4 miles away, ETA 28 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, I could walk.
You could have walked there quicker. Yep. That's traffic. Well, that's the price you pay for living in paradise.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes. I've taken a turn in my course that I teach, and I'm kind of excited. So,
well, tell me.
I gave my argument for God's existence.
So, what's the argument? Let's hear it.
Well, I'm also reading this book. This is God, His Existence in Nature, a Thomistic Solution to Certain Agnostic Antinomies by Reginald Garrigou-Lagrange. And this, like, if I were stuck on a deserted island, it's 2 volumes. And when I was going through my own crisis of faith, I ordered this 2-volume set. And in my opinion, it's top 5 all-time greatest book or works on God's existence in nature.
When was it written?
This is the 5th edition. I believe this edition, I think, came out in 1932. Reginald Garrigou-Lagrange was the father of neo-Thomistic thought. In the late 1800s, the Pope released an encyclical commending Thomas Aquinas' philosophy for the modern church as the great weapon that they would use to combat modernism. Modernism being spearheaded by people like Immanuel Kant and his followers, where they argued that you couldn't know the real world through the categories of human thought. And therefore, of course, you can't know God. And for the Thomists, of course, Thomas has all the resources that we need to combat that philosophy. And so Garrigou-Lagrange was one of the main catalyst for this revivification of Thomistic studies. And this book is a full-on critique of Kant's agnosticism. And there are other books that you could go to, but this is, in my opinion, one of the best. Another great one was Stuart Hackett's book, The Resurrection of Theism, where he too gives a full critique of Immanuel Kant, but he still has what I would call sort of remnants of that kind of Kantian transcendentalism in his own theory of knowledge, whereas Garrigou-Lagrange does a full deconstruction of what Kant was saying. So it's just, and so every year when I'm about to present my arguments, I will look up some of the things that Garrigou-Lagrange says here. It's always refreshing to get a recap. So if you can find these volumes anywhere, and you don't want them, buy them and send them to me as a gift, because I will gladly, collect other copies of this work, because this work.
Are they out of print?
Yeah, and there was an effort. There was an effort by a publisher to reprint all of Garrigou-Lagrange's material, but then there was some sort of legal battle over it, and so they stopped doing it. So I have his commentary on Thomas' Summa. I have 2 volumes of that, but the other I actually have 3, and it's horrible because each of those volumes was put out by a different publisher, so they don't look at all alike. So I can't put them in a nice set. It's depressing. These are the things that keep me up at night, as they say.
Well, let's hear from the title. It sounds like natural theology. Is that?
Oh, it is, yeah. It's his full defense of natural theology. And Vatican I was put out in the 1870s. So Garrigou-Lagrange, writing about 60 years later, 40 years later, 60 years later, I think the first edition of this came out in 1915. He's giving a full defense of the statement in Vatican I where it says that God's existence is provable by the light of natural reason. So just human reason reflecting on nature can know that God exists.
Well, let's hear some of his arguments.
His argument is just an expose of Thomas's proofs for God's existence, where he gives a full defense of, for example, Thomas Aquinas's argument from motion, Thomas's argument from contingency, and so forth. So just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, Thomas gave 5 proofs for God's existence. The first 3 were cosmological. Then he gave an argument from perfection, and then he gave a design argument. All of these arguments are deductive in character. Okay, so just take the design argument. It is nothing like William Paley's watchmaker argument. William Paley's watchmaker argument is an inductive argument based on analogy. I'm walking through the woods, I see a stone, and for all I know, it's just been lying there for eternity, no big whoop. But what if I walk a few feet more and I stumble upon a watch? What is it about the watch that makes me think there's a designer? And modern versions of this will point to the specified complexity of the watch.
That's right.
Then by way of analogy, you look at the eye, for example, and it's clear that the eye is far more complex than a watch. And therefore, if the watch requires a designer, how much more does the eye? That's how a typical design argument today runs. Aquinas's argument is grounded in metaphysics, where he is running the changes of Aristotle's contention that there is an intrinsic final cause for everything we see in nature. And by intrinsic final cause, he's just saying that baked into the system is a close relationship between form and function. So I have this thing called a hand, and it's clear that my hand is for grasping, right? And if you agree with that, then you're speaking of an intrinsic final causality for all things that we see. All things are moving towards an end. Now, it's important that you note that it's an intrinsic final causality that Aquinas is building his argument off of, because on that model, you could technically be an atheist and agree with the premise, because all you're really saying is that it is just natural for things to move towards an end. I used to think that the principle of finality was begging the question until I came to appreciate the distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic causality. But it was reading Gary Lagrange. He has another book on this issue that convinced me. And then another person that I really came to appreciate, or I'd already appreciated him, but helped me with this, was Ed Feser, who wrote a book on metaphysics and medieval scholastic metaphysics. And in that book, he lays out the distinction as well. And this allows the Thomist to offer something that the typical design arguer is not able to offer. It is going to be very difficult for you to get a dyed-in-the-wool naturalist to agree that the first living cell had an extrinsic cause. But if you move more towards metaphysics and you speak of intrinsic final causality, where there's a formal cause for all things, a material cause, a final cause, and so forth, then you can build from that observation a movement from intrinsic finality to extrinsic finality. And that's how Thomas does that. Is it meaningful for me to say that the movement towards final ends is wholly from within nature? And if you want to give an example, imagine you have a paintbrush painting a picture. Okay. There's intrinsic finality between the paintbrush hitting the canvas, and it's serving its function to paint the picture on the canvas, and the canvas is serving its function to receive form onto its surface, and so forth. Hopefully you're getting this picture. That's intrinsic causality, intrinsic final causality all the way through. And yet, is it meaningful for me to speak of such intrinsic and intimate and such a teleological process by just appealing to the intrinsic connection, or the connection rather, between the paintbrush and the canvas? And Gary Lagrange would say no. And he had this, I love this analogy, because he says, to say that all things are moving only by intrinsic causal connections, me grasping this form and functioning the way they do in nature, without appealing to an intelligence behind it, is to be likened unto someone who thinks that the paintbrush can paint the canvas without an intelligence behind it. And if you say, but if I offer some more natural explanations for this intrinsic causality, that will still help me maintain this natural explanation. And Gary Lagrange says that is like saying that as long as I keep adding inches to the paintbrush, I can explain the picture on the canvas.
Right.
And so even an infinitely long paintbrush cannot in itself explain the picture on the canvas. And in the same way, even an infinite universe that is infinite in duration cannot explain the design features of our universe acting as they do towards final ends.
It's kind of like the multiverse argument, which is a ridiculous argument.
Sure. It counters, yeah, it has an intrinsic defeater of even multiverse arguments. And to me, it's if you grasp it, and I may not have done a great job explaining it, but if you grasp it, it's really difficult to get around. And so to me, it's a much more powerful design argument than, again, the watchmaker argument. I'm not dissing the watchmaker argument, by the way. I think it's a tool in the shed that we can use. But this one, resting as it does in metaphysics, is just so powerful.
So, do you think all 5 of Aquinas's evidences for God still hold up?
Yes. And you can hold them up in 2 ways. One way is just to restructure the argument. And so that's what I do with my students. I give my own version of the contingency argument. That's his 3rd way. And the 3rd way says, okay, everything I see around me, including myself, is contingent, meaning we are changing and finite and dependent upon other things. What causes my existence right now? And the extrinsic cause I'm appealing to, you have to ask, well, is it too contingent? Well, now we're off and running in this infinite regress. And even if there are an infinite number of contingent beings, each currently causing the other, there still must be an outside cause, an external cause holding all of that together. Why? Because if every member of a contingent series is in fact contingent, then the whole is. And the cause of that contingent series cannot itself be contingent. It must be uncaused. And so go ahead.
It seems to me there's a kind of a corollary conservation of energy argument from a physics standpoint, and that is there is energy in the universe, which to me means that it cannot be infinitely old, because it would have run out. So what got it started? What charged the battery, if you will, at the very beginning? Matter or energy cannot be created or destroyed, but something created the original energy source that got the universe going.
Now, what you're doing, and I love it, you're appealing to the origin of the universe. So what Aquinas is doing is he's assuming the universe is infinitely old.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't believe you could prove that the universe had a beginning. And of course, he wasn't privy to the current scientific evidence for that.
That's right.
And so he just said, look, he's a Christian, so he believes that the universe had a beginning because the Bible tells him so. But he says, look, atheist, I'll give you your infinitely old universe. Even so, it still must be currently sustained by an uncaused cause. And then what he's going to do is he's going to take the way I word it is there are 2 things we know about this uncaused cause. First, that it doesn't need a cause. It's not caused by anything. And second of all, it is actually causing the universe. And from those 2 basic things we know about the uncaused cause, you can show that by good and necessary consequence, that uncaused cause must be the kind of God revealed in the Bible. Okay. Now, to piggyback off of what you just said about entropy, Aquinas does point out that if the universe is infinitely old, we have to appreciate the fact that given infinite time, whatever can happen will happen. Right?
Yep.
By the way, this is the Darwinian premise. Given infinite time, whatever can happen will happen. And so somehow, somewhere, some way, life can spontaneously generate in the primordial soup somewhere. And voila, we're the ones that got it. Now, that's an old Darwinian 19th century version of what we would see as the multiverse argument.
Yeah.
They didn't have proof that the universe had a beginning, so they were just playing with this idea of an infinitely old universe. Okay, well, Aquinas would say, given infinite time, whatever can happen will happen, and it is logically possible for the universe to go out of existence. But if given infinite time, whatever can happen will happen, then the universe doesn't exist. The universe does exist, and therefore you have two choices. Either the universe had a beginning, which no atheist really wants us to say, or there is an outside conserving cause that's been keeping the universe in being for all eternity.
You know, I just read an article over the weekend, Travis, that talked about how absolutely resistant many scientists, especially physicists, were to the idea of the beginning of the universe, of a Big Bang. We accept it as a scientific fact, but they saw it as, when it first came out, as a theological point, and absolutely hated it. There was a lot of violence. There were governments that told scientists they couldn't publish that they couldn't believe it because of the theological implications. And it's just, we accept it now because there's so much overwhelming evidence. But if you think about what that really means for a theistic viewpoint, it's pretty astounding.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the case for God's existence is so astoundingly amazing. You can start from so many different vantage points to make the case at this point. All of the classical arguments are in play. So we interviewed Gavin Kerr a few years ago,
right,
on this very show, and he is someone who's just defending the arguments that Thomas gave as he originally gave them. Ed Feser is giving a modern twist to the arguments. So you have scholars out there playing, doing both. And I'm one of those guys who will let all the versions flourish. Because if Feser's version won't convince you, maybe Kerr's will. And if Kerr's won't, maybe Peter Kreft's will. And if Peter Kreft's won't, then maybe Norman Geisler's will. And if Norman Geisler's won't, and on it goes. I mean, you can spin these arguments in a lot of different ways to meet the needs of people that are asking these questions. So I just think it's an exciting time to be around, especially now that in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, we have so many people buying Bibles, and they're wanting to know, can this book stand up to critical scrutiny?
So, Travis, what are the best arguments against this argument, and how do you respond to those arguments?
Probably the most enduring argument, and I'll raise this point in our interview with Gavin Kerr, so I would encourage the audience to go look up that in the archives. But I think the most enduring argument is that Thomas's proofs rest on Aristotelian physics that didn't appreciate many of the things that Newton had discovered, and certainly didn't appreciate quantum mechanics and all of that. And what people that argue that don't appreciate is the fact that Aquinas was not presupposing Aristotle's understanding of physics. He was using Aristotle's understanding of physics to illustrate his metaphysics. But Aquinas himself said that one day scientists may come along and have a better way of explaining the universe. So he was well aware that the progress of science may move beyond what he was working with.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between an illustration and a proof. And so what the modern defender of Thomism is saying is that we need to drop the illustrations because they don't work, because we're living in the world of Newton and Einstein and so forth. But that doesn't mean that the metaphysics undergirding these proofs is unsound. So,
what do we do, Travis? This is really the first step in the argument towards theism, and specifically Christian theism. Most people in the world accept the idea of a personal God, somewhere around 80%, and yet most people aren't following Christ.
Sure.
So what do you say to somebody who says, yeah, okay, I think the arguments are pretty strong that God exists, but I don't see how his existence affects me. He doesn't seem to require anything from me or do anything to me, or I don't see him or experience him in any way. So what?
That's a great question, and I would say when you do your full natural theology, that's going to include with it the moral argument. And if there are objective moral values that have their locus in God, then as C.S. Lewis points out, then we have to assume that this moral lawgiver is interested in human conduct. And since he is all-knowing, he knows about you. He knows what you're doing. And since he's sustaining you existence, he at least cares for you on some level. Because right now, as we speak, we're being sustained in being by this being. So
when you
right
say
now,
go ahead. When you say sustained, you mean like holding all the particles together in his mind from one moment to the next continually. Yeah.
That's right. God didn't just like Gavin Kerr gives this illustration in one of his books. It's not like God just created by taking his finger and pushing the domino, and that was it. He's not this is not a deistic deity that we're talking about. We're talking about a being who brought the universe into being out of nothing, and then since that moment has sustained it in being. If God were to, if you will, take his hands off the universe, then the universe would perish into oblivion. So you're radically contingent upon the sustaining activities of this God moment by moment. So it's very relevant to you to know that this God is real and that this God is interested in your moral conduct. And the Abrahamic tradition, whether you're talking about Jews, Christians, or Muslims, they all agree that God is going to judge us at the end of our lives. That should be very relevant to your life.
I find it very interesting, Travis, that not only I believe that God exists, it's the Christian God, but he's left enough space between the arguments and my person that I can ignore him or argue against him and continue. Like he never forces himself on me. And I think that's a design argument that could be developed in itself. He could just be so present with us all the time that you would have to be insane to deny him. And yet he gives us, it's like he lets us believe what we want to believe.
Sure.
And I think it's a grace, actually, because he's not going to force himself on us.
Cornelius Van Til, and I've given this analogy before, he likens the human race to a little girl he saw sitting on her father's lap and slapping her father in the face. And at one point in our lives, we're all that little girl. God is sustaining us in existence, and we're blaspheming him, we're disobeying his law, we're doing the things that we do, and we're not appreciating the fact that we wouldn't be able to even do those things if God did not sustain us in being and allow us to do them.
Wow. So all of this stuff that we hear about God not existing, all the sins of humanity, all the horrible things that we do to each other, God is sustaining us while we're doing that and allowing us allowing us to do it to each other. That's really profound when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Travis, we're out of time.
It's also, yeah, I was about to say, it's also the end of our show, but I'm always enjoying this with you.
Oh man, this is so much fun. I really enjoy talking to you every week, brother.
You too. And tell our mutual friend, give him my condolences that he actually has to spend time with you.
I will. Maybe I'll buy him dinner and that'll keep him there for the whole time. I don't know.
Nice. Nice.
All right, buddy.